Next, I'd like to invite up Jed Fisher from 40 Pipeline, who's going to moderate a panel for us on VR simulation and training. Jed, are you ready?
To Chimera for that last presentation. That was fantastic and actually very applicable to this next one, which is all about how AR and VR can help revolutionize training throughout industry. And by throughout industry, I think that's what we're talking about. It's not just manufacturing, it's healthcare, it's other verticals as well. With me are some excellent people. I think we'll start off by a quick introduction, a quick roundtable, and I'll let everyone introduce themselves briefly and maybe give one or two examples of some of what you're doing with AR or VR for training, and we'll go into that in more detail. I'll open it up to the audience for questions. My name's Jed Fisher from 40 Pipeline, and here is Joe from Microsoft.
That's right, Joe Varrasso, Microsoft. I look after HoloLens partners in Europe. Over the past year, we've increased the ecosystem around the world. We've got some 30-plus partners now in Europe, over 130 across the world. And we've moved from custom applications all the way through to now actual out-of-the-box applications which can deliver value pretty quickly. And we can talk about some of those as we go.
My name is Richard Lewington. I'm from Plain Concepts. We are actually a Microsoft mixed reality partner in the US and in Europe. And we are primarily based in Spain, but we have offices in the States, in the UK. We're approximately 12 years old, and over this time, we have been a solutions provider, all using a lot of technologies, mainly Microsoft. And we have also created our own graphics engine, Wave Engine, which we use for industry.
Chris Koomen, product owner of virtual reality at KLM. I started 10 years ago at KLM as a mechanic, and a year ago I made the transition to Digital Studios, where I'm product owner of virtual reality. I started with my first VR training, which was an evacuation training of the hangars, which was 360 video, interactive, where you can make your own choices and follow your own path. That one was a quite big success, and now KLM wants more and asked me to pick up that role.
I'm Oliver, with microphone, I think so. Business partner for AR VR solutions in the production department of the brand VW. So I'm the guy who people contact if they want to have some kind of VR applications, talking with them about VR is necessary for their application, and then talking about training purposes or production optimization and stuff like this.
Thank you very much. So I guess one of the things I've seen when I've gone out to industry and had the question asked, do we use VR, do we use AR, or do we use mixed reality for training? And I think sometimes, especially to people outside of this room and outside of this industry, this is sometimes a hard question to solve. You know, these are technologies, but how can they actually help us with our solutions? We've got quite a bit of a mix here. So maybe Oliver, if you feel like starting, what did you choose and why? And we'll start there.
We started with virtual reality, in fact, because we could integrate this kind of hardware really easy into our IT infrastructure, using our existing VR working stations. We got, the first try was some logistic area, where we trained our people how to use tools using for logistics purposes. In German it's called Mitfahrplattform. I have no idea what's in English. So you have some kind of logistic area where you have to pick a lot of stuff out of the containers. So you don't have to walk a lot and carry a lot of things. You have some kind of platform, you're standing on it, and then you just go for the next container, or have to go back, so you can do, so you get the hardware support for the picking process. We have to train our people over there, but we don't want to clog the real hardware for the training purposes, so we did set up some VR experience. And right now we are also thinking about using mixed reality for training purposes. So if you think we have the real environment set it up, the real tools over there, so please use them. So we use mixed reality to show some more details, virtual details, but in fact we are using or interacting with the real world. So this is the transition we are doing right now, but we started with virtual reality.
Just maybe before we move to Chris, with your virtual reality, are you using hand controllers or is that hands-free?
We're using the HTC Vive controllers because if you press a button, it's either 1 or 0. We did also some tryouts with gesture control, but for example, we did the experience that a lot of people do the grabbing thing a lot different. So one is grabbing like this or this or this. This has to be taught to the sensors, and right now it's really hard for the people to actually do the grabbing like this all the time. There's no standard. And that's why we choose the HTC Vive controllers, because you press a button or you don't press it.
Thank you. Chris?
I actually don't choose for kind of hardware. I don't want to be specific.
That word.
Choose that device, because each training is different and needs different approaches. So I really look at what are the demands for this training, what do you want to achieve for it, and that's how we look for the right tools to use. Because there are so many, there's such a variety that you can use everything, but not everything is suitable for all solutions. With the evacuation training, we used Gear VR because we wanted it need to be easy to use for people, but also easy to pick up and lightweighted, no heavy devices behind it. So the Samsung was the easiest way at that moment, but for high graphic things we use HTC, for example. If we want to interact and walk around an aircraft, we use HoloLenses, so you can use X-ray and point out things at the same time with other people. So each tool has different meanings actually. So.
Thank you. Richard?
Well, to follow on with that, as a solutions provider, it would be down to the needs of the client. But we would talk about the pros and cons of using each within a given scenario. The great thing about what we're able to offer is we have a graphics development engine, and we can integrate the data sets or the individual source files, the industry-specific files into our development, and then deploy that solution into HoloLens or to VR.
In Plain Concepts, you guys are working on healthcare, but also other industry.
Yeah, so we've just developed, as some of you may have seen from our stand, a solution to help a doctor with a CT-guided biopsy. So the doctor would want to take a sample from the body, and this augmented reality display would help the doctor basically see through the patient, giving them a much more accurate description over a 2D monitor. But we've been creating solutions for manufacturing, construction, retail, a variety of different sectors, yeah.
And Joe, I guess you're coming mainly from HoloLens, but Microsoft also has mixed reality devices, more VR-like.
Yeah, that's right. Microsoft, as you may imagine, take a platform approach. So we are supporting multiple form factors, and very much like these guys are saying, it very much depends on the use case on which form factor makes sense in the environment. If you want to be totally immersive, maybe a dangerous situation or maybe a future situation which doesn't exist, then VR makes sense. If you want to actually apply learning in the real world, then you'll move towards a HoloLens kind of experience. And there's some interesting use cases as well, which are maybe not expected. Like one of my partners was working with a robotics firm, and they actually, the learning was about how to learn the physical control for this robot to operate this big manufacturing robot. Now, to work with the real thing it could be dangerous for a novice, and you don't want to go in everywhere. And so the holographic experience there is actually the robot itself, but there's a physical, real-world controller they're learning to use. And with the HoloLens, you can actually then, you can scale it up. It could be on the coffee table, but you can scale it up and what it would be like in the actual real world. So there's different scenarios. In the medical scenario, I think that's very popular. We've got a lot of the learning hospitals now are moving away from wet labs, so cadavers and things, to a holographic representation, and the advantages that gives and being able to have collaborative learning. And that could actually be a mix of devices as well. You could be having a HoloLens collaborative experience, but you could also participate in a VR world as well. So we're seeing a lot more of those cross-platform experiences too.
I love how, Chris, as a mechanic, you've experienced these challenges head on. You've probably learned without VR originally, and now you're using VR to solve real problems to help train people. In terms of impact, this title is Revolutionising Training. Can you each maybe talk a little bit about sort of how you've measured the impact that your solutions have had, and if you can sort of point to that as much as possible?
It's a major impact, actually, bigger than we expected. One of the things is with evacuation. They're trying to get this wrapped around now to get the evacuation, which must be each year done in the hangars, to get it done one time in 3 years. So that's a lot of savings for the money, because the company is keep on going for those 2 years instead of only one. Another example is we have a cabin training for VR, which is replacing the aircraft physical visit. So the people are not going to the aircraft anymore, so you don't have to get an aircraft on the ground for it, you don't have to travel the people to the aircraft anymore, you don't have to rent a bus for it. That's quite a lot of savings, but one of the things that were quite interesting that we didn't expect was the trainers. We never focused on the trainers, and one of the trainers said, it is really relaxing for us because we don't have to look at 15 children anymore at the aircraft. We just sit them in the classroom and they are playing by themselves. But that was a thing that we never expected, because we were always focusing on the trainee instead of the trainer.
Right.
So yeah, but still there are things coming up that we didn't expect and see now, which are huge benefits on it. Yeah.
And in terms of who you're helping currently with VR, it sounds like it's actually the people who are working in the aircraft, but it's also the people who are building the aircraft, or is that not so much the building, it's maintaining, I guess?
People who are not building the aircraft, but repairing the aircraft for big maintenance things. We use HoloLenses also and image recognition on it, so the manuals will upload it to the HoloLenses and they can see how it works and disassemble it on the aircraft.
Right.
Especially for new people, quite useful.
Right.
But also, as I said, for cabin crew, we do training where they can walk around to the aircraft and see where they can find locations like emergency equipment and those things. We've got also a training for pilots where they are at landing on airport and they will be surprised by a lightning strike suddenly, and they have to react on it. They have to do an exercise then to follow the procedure. And also there were quite surprising reactions on it. 50% of the pilots are really acting to the pilot in VR, and not just like, how are you, but really questioning to reply answering. So they're very immersed in it, and it isn't that hard to create that, but you have to get a good storyline, I guess. Yeah.
Interesting, thank you. Oliver, I mean, how about you? How do you feel, how are you revolutionizing it with your solutions, or where do you see the opportunity to?
Before we used virtual reality for training, we did have two approaches to train our people on an assembly line. The first one was to give them like a desktop-based training. So we said we had a classroom full of 20 people. It was either some, I would say, PDF video mix, so people would saw something or have to read something, what they have to do in the future, or the best job still till today, to go to a real hardware prototype to actually do what they have to do in the future. With the third option of virtual reality, we're combining both approaches, because right now we can do actual steps of what they have to do in virtual reality, so they really do it, so the learn success is really high, but without the need of getting hardware prototypes for these activities. So I think we don't have this really high level of hardware prototype training, because you don't have that much haptic force feedback, for example. There are still some steps to be made, but it's far better than some PDF or video slides, obviously. But at first there was a question, is the higher amount of creation of a VR experience really that necessary or that beneficial to really go into this effort? The answer is yes, it definitely is. And we don't do this for all the production steps in the manufacturing, but for the complex one, for the ones where people have to interact with each other. We have production steps, there are 3 people involved. So they have to get to know, okay, what is the other persons are doing? If we would just do like a PDF or something like that, they would be surprised if they go for the first time to the production area.
Thank you. Richard, how about you? I mean, can you give an example of a project that you feel, hey, this has really done something, changed the game and revolutionized?
Yeah, I mean, we recently created a solution for an aircraft company, and the benefits for them was, again, they wouldn't have to access a complete aircraft, full machinery, engines, a lot. We could integrate the 3D files into a virtual reality environment, and they could manipulate them and use them, and it would cut the costs, really. And the great thing about having a solution like that is, you can deploy it anywhere. You don't have to bring people to a central base. The solution could be sent to anywhere across the world, and the people who would need to be trained would be trained a lot more quicker. Trainers wouldn't have to be sent around. So
these are all sort of metrics you guys are tracking, qualifying, proving KPIs.
With any solution, we ask for feedback, but also we have to look at the initial implementation and the planning beforehand to make sure that we're meeting the requirements.
Joe, I know like remote sort of collaboration with HoloLens is an area I've seen a lot of take-up of HoloLens. Is that something you could maybe make a comment on or talk a little bit about?
Yeah, sure. I'll touch on that, and then I'll go back to a concrete example of the learning. But in terms of, we see one of the, I guess, low-hanging fruit in terms of productivity and delivering learning is remote assistance. And just last week at Build, we announced that we'd support a first-party application for remote assistance. What this means is you can be out in the field. You might, all the training you might get, you still might not have all the information you need in a situation. So with remote assistance, you can actually bring in an expert, and the expert can see through the field person's eyes and give advice and actually annotate and provide extra information to solve that task. So that's a common scenario. And then if you flip it the other way, you can also use it as a training tool where you might be actually have an expert performing a task, and then the remote user can actually learn by seeing anywhere in the world. In terms of a concrete example with metrics, one I wanted to share is a customer, BAE, who work with one of our global partners called PTC. And this touches on some of the things I heard today about maybe the cost of developing solutions and scaling. So maybe a year ago, these applications would have to be hand-built every time. What we're seeing now is organisations, ISVs, coming out with out-of-the-box offerings, often a subscription model where you can compose the solution. So in this case, PTC built a solution for BAE who build batteries for hybrid bus vehicles. And this solution basically went through the step-by-step process in assembling a bus battery. So what they found in terms of metrics are 2 areas. One, content creation. So in order to create that kind of content would have taken months, now it takes weeks. So they measured that, and it was something like 1/10 of the time to create content. So that means you can do more and less cost. And then the other side was the efficacy. So they found that 30 to 40% efficiency in terms of delivering that training. And that's something, again, with the tools you can then start applying to other scenarios. So it's a concrete example.
Can I ask, just in the audience here, how many people have used a HoloLens or tried on one yourself?
Oh, that's good to see.
It's a good audience here.
Quite surprising, actually.
Excellent.
Come by Plain Concepts then.
I was about to say, because if you didn't, you could get a free one here from Joe. No.
A free viewing.
Free viewing,
Yes.
that's right.
I did bring mine, so if anyone wants to come and see me afterwards,
How about in terms of collaboration? How important is that in VR or an AR or a mixed reality scenario? Obviously, remote collaboration is a very good example, but What about from you, Chris and Oliver? Is that something, is it a single experience for a single person, or are multiple people part of those VR experiences? Have you had that demand? Could you?
Collaboration, you mean on VR in the company?
Yeah, with how your VR experiences, are they sort of single person, or can you see other avatars or things like that? Is that complementary?
It's also depending on what the question is. Actually, the virtual aircraft visit that we have a 360 movie, there's someone who is explaining you the aircraft, so yeah, there's a person as well who is talking to you. In the aircraft, exactly the same. There's also in the pilot seat someone who is flying the aircraft and using the buttons. But for the evacuation, yeah, there are a few actors, but then it's up to you. Then you have to do it all yourself. So.
Are they real actors or scripted?
They're scripted.
Okay, cool. Do you have anywhere they're real? They're giving interactive human feedback? I guess
Sometimes they give feedback. They think they are real. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, fun. How about you, Oliver? Thoughts on that?
We are using VR collaboration in the way that we invite the factory sites, where the creation process of the training is done, to give their feedback regarding the current training status. So, for example, we are using a company based in Germany for, I think, half of our group-wide activity or training activities, and using our VR platform I mentioned earlier. We're able to just give this company a platform where they upload the current content, and then we'll make a VR session and a training site from South Africa, Wolfsburg, and the German company join a VR collaboration scene. The German guy is doing something, and the South African tell them, no, it's not the way we do it over here, because there's a different way of doing something. While doing the real training activity, there's like one trainer and one trainee, this kind of relationship. The trainer is like the supervisor. He's not interacting, he's not like an avatar. He's watching the guy more on a beamer screen or something like that. So it's not real interaction. The real interaction is done for the training setup itself. And I did had a chance of KLM's training, I think 2 weeks ago. I was really immersed within 10 or 20 seconds because the actors were really talking with me, and I was like, I didn't expect this in a 360-degree view, because all the videos you see is like spectator mode or something like that. The story, which is KLM telling over there, is really, really good, because it's immersing you in a really fast way, and after 15 seconds, yeah, you have to do something, so you do recognize that you are in this gear VR, but it's really immersive, it's really interactive.
That's one of the things that we find out. You have to get their attention in the first 30 seconds. If you not get them in the first 30 seconds, it's difficult to get them immersed anyway. So you have to be very careful what you choose and how you choose those scenarios to get them in the first 30 seconds, but then you can go loose. Yeah.
Interesting.
For example, in one training from you guys, I think it was the evacuation training, and there was like a team meeting in the morning where like 6 colleagues and a team supervisor had a short discussion, and 2 other colleagues wanted to go for coffee or something like that. They greeted each other, they had a short talk for 3 or 4 seconds, and this is clearly not scripted in that way for the user in the end, but I think it was scripted.
It was scripted, yeah.
But it felt really natural, because in the end, if you do have a meeting over there, someone is interrupting you all the time, and that's why it felt really natural.
Nice subtlety, but yeah, as you say, simulation of real life.
Yeah. One of the problems is, and it's good that you tell, because you really have to find it out, you have to see it before you know where we are talking about. That's the difficult part of our job, I believe. You only believe it when you finally see it. So yeah.
Richard, you come from, I believe, from an education background.
I do, yes.
How do you use that to sort of measure, is this working? Is this making training people better and faster? Do you build that into your experiences, that there's some sort of measurement? How do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, from an educational point of view, I mean, I'm very interested in looking at the methodology that's integrated within the developments. So, for example, I've noticed with some HoloLens applications, with some VR applications, that a lot use a very traditional training model of what's called transmission-based learning. So it's just a person standing there talking to you and explaining to you. Now, for me, that's not really any good, because your retention and your learning acquisition is not going to be very good unless you're involved. We learn by doing, and we learn by collaborating. So I think the developers and the people who create the content should really think more about, okay, introducing more gamification, or what are called 21st century skills like collaboration and communication, and make it more gamey, and there's a lot of feedback and there's a lot of assessment going on throughout an application, rather than a voiceover or a virtual person, actor in front of you just telling you what to do. So I think that's very important, yeah.
Joe, certainly from my experience, HoloLens is one of the most collaborative ways, because you're mixing reality with augmented, mixed. How are you finding their HoloLens collaboration examples are being sort of set apart and helping?
Yeah, there's a few examples I can give, and I'm just thinking which ones I can share with you that best illustrate this. So we're working with a company called Pearson's, who are big in terms of education space, and they've coming out with a suite of applications across mixed reality and HoloLens. And one of the paradigm they use is actually they don't want to replace the teacher. They want to give them tools that will enhance the experience, and it's very much an interactive experience. So an example, one example is Holo Patient, where you're training nurses in how to recognise particular conditions, and that would have been previously a process where you get actors made up and in different conditions, and that's time consuming, it takes a long time, it's not consistent. So they created a scalable, repeatable, holographic version of that, but it's also multi-user, and so the instructor can participate and all the students can participate, and they can all have a interactive discussion about what they're looking at and triaging it. And not only that, they've got a back end to that which can track where people are looking, so you get this rich analytics in terms of are people actually looking in the right places to be able to make the diagnosis. So that's one example. Another example is more in the K-12 area. It's called holochemistry. So in this example, it's quite simple. You've got all the elements and you can construct molecules, and the kids are doing this interactively, collaboratively. And it's not something that's easy to do in any other context. So that's two quick examples of collaboration.
Love it.
Chemistry was the first application I showed within our group, because it really showed the potential of the HoloLens. It was like having molecules in front of you, which was never able or possible before that. It was really, really good work.
I remember chemistry molecules using the very, very, very old-fashioned glasses. That was one of the first 3D examples of using some sort of glasses with a piece of paper. I think one of the things I really like about the HoloLens is the gaze feature. I mean, I think that's in training is a very useful thing, because sometimes somebody's looking for the button, but they're actually looking at something else, and understanding where they're looking, maybe even recording that can be a very useful thing for training on. So we're at a VR/AR event, and VR/AR is just the ultimate, and it's going to take over everything. It's doing all these amazing things. It's revolutionizing training. How about some negatives? Have there been any? Have you had some, big hiccups or setbacks along the way in your journeys? Oliver, you want to keep going first?
Can you repeat?
Negatives and problems, big setbacks with VR/AR, things you didn't expect.
Of course, there wasn't any flaws.
It's all perfect at Volkswagen.
We did everything perfect. So we did really had a first tryout when we said, okay, we have all the data, we have the process management behind it, all applications. We just have to merge everything, and then we have a fully optimized training for the people. The first challenge was to actually find the data. So we do have it, but not every person has the rights to access it. And this was the first challenge. Then to have this kind of full 100% immersive environment was really hard to create. But the biggest challenge, in fact, was how to create not only an environment but also a training activity to have like really good learning success out of it. It's not just showing you have to do this the right way and do this step and then do the next step. It was also about some level approaches for the first level. You get a really lot of help for the next level. You get some hints or something like that. For the third level, it was like, okay, if you don't do this kind of activity, which you have should be done in 10 seconds, and after 20 seconds, you get more hints.
Right.
And the fourth level was some test level, I would say. So this kind of manipulation of the Unity or Unreal scene will be done every time. So we don't get a training activity just out of the box. We have to do some activities or some programming things. So we have to talk about the concept as well.
Makes sense. How about you, Chris?
I don't have any problems. Like Oliver said, no, there are no problems in VR. You can just rewrite them in VR and this problem is solved. Now, you've got challenges. You can solve every challenge actually, but you have to put effort in it. My biggest challenge were to have an aircraft on the ground fully for shooting a movie. An airplane is for flying people around and not for shooting a movie on the ground. So that was one of the biggest challenges actually that I found in my journey. But that was because I need to show people what we could do.
Right.
Now the people believe in what we can do with it and what we can achieve with it. And I just one phone call away and there's an airplane waiting for me to shoot a movie. So also that challenge is solved now. It's
Great.
just, yeah.
I recall in our earlier conversations, you talked about, for some people, VR was a lot to put on when they put the headset on. There was a lot to engage, and there was a sort of a time period you could engage somebody and they'd actually start getting tired more quickly because it is such a powerful medium. Can you talk maybe a little bit about that?
Oh, that's quite a difficult one. We find out that with testing the evacuation training, there are 1,158 scenarios in there. Wow. So it took me days before I saw them all, and I needed to see them all if the flow was correct on it. But what I noticed that when the end of the day I put off the glasses and they were filmed in daylight. So the moment that I put off the glasses, I thought, oh, it's dark by now. But I was thinking it was somewhere midday. Those are things that I'm still trying to solve because this is a difficult one. No one really was thinking about that challenge as well within VR. So I'm still playing with that one, but yeah, that was one thing that we find out as well in VR.
Maybe we need a time of day simulator so that your
well, I totally believe that we can get jet lags even smaller with this kind of tools. Yeah,
I bet. Interesting. Richard, how about yourself?
I mean, from a sales and marketing point of view, I think the hardest thing is convincing people about the long-term viability and the potential of using something like HoloLens. Somebody made a great comment yesterday at one of the talks, and it was, everybody's heard of it, nobody's tried it. And that's probably the main challenge when convincing potential customers, hey, we've got this piece of tech, and they think, okay, is it a fad? How can it benefit me? So you have to talk about a lot of the benefits and the things that you can do with it. And then they think, okay, if it's only a fad, then if I'm going to be investing X amount of money into this development, how will it serve me in the long term? So with our dev engine, anything that we create is going to be future-proof, and we promise that to the client, and also backward compatibility, so they can use it with a whole range of devices. So they can compile it, but they can deploy it anywhere, and we'll include that implementation into their solution.
One of the things I've certainly found is, and I've even heard it at this event, is a lot of people have to almost disclaim that their VR experience is not going to make you sick. I hate that there's been some negative experiences, proof of concepts, and people have got the fact, certain things wrong, frame rates wrong, or the wrong medium, or the wrong focal points. And that can have a negative effect on the great solutions that are out there. People said, I've tried VR, I don't need to do it again. Joe, how about you?
Yeah, well, just following that point, I think that's true of whether it's VR or even with the HoloLens or augmented reality. I think creating good user experiences is very important, and one of the reasons we have a certification program and run partners through that program, like Plain Concepts, who's one of our certified partners, is that we want to make sure that there's a certain quality bar in terms of that experience and things you can do that make it easier for people to interact, even in that world. I was trying to remember the original point now was the
negative experience.
Negative experiences. Yeah. So there's that, but I think also touching on something that's already been mentioned, understanding the use cases. I mean, when you've got a bit of technology, it's a hammer, everything's a nail. So understand where the strength lies in the particular technology. For something like HoloLens, it's the fact that it understands the real world and it's hands-free and you can work with the real world and collaborate. That's a strength. But if you can solve the problem with your mobile device and you don't need to have those features, then solve it with the mobile device. I mean, and same with the virtual reality. So one of those things is just working through and understanding what the use case is and where's the value. And then on the technical side, kind of touched on as well, but these are starting to get addressed. You've got these companies have got 3D assets, your product design, you've got them in CAD/CAM models. How do you get those assets, ingest them in a way that you can then have those experiences? How do you automate that process, make it streamlined? And there's tools now coming out that will address that. And we've got a content management problem as well. How do you manage all those assets you've got in the organisation so that you can reuse them and scale? And these things, there are tools coming out, but it's an emerging space.
Yep, good
I
point.
believe that you cannot claim that you won't be sick in VR because that's for every people different. We've seen quite a lot of people in VR now, but what we also seen is when we give them a list of things that can happen and they see, well, I can be nauseous or what, they claim to be faster nauseous than without knowing they can be nauseous. So sometimes it's in their mind as well.
Right.
They think they get nauseous, but they aren't.
I think also the population, people will get used to these tools more and more. I remember when the 3D games came out, people would get ill.
The second time people are getting less nauseous. One of the things that we noticed that girls are faster nauseous than boys actually.
Interesting. Okay.
So yeah, also that I think we need to do a lot of investigation more on it because
Thank you. Let's maybe open it up to some questions in the audience. Anyone want to go first? Sorry, first, second.
Could you explain a little bit about the practical issues that you run into with training stations, multi-users, and all these kind of aspects? Don't see much about that. This is more theoretical side, but once you get 10 people in a room, how does that work for KLM or for Volkswagen, for instance?
we use the HoloLenses with 8 people at the same time. They're looking at one object where you can interact with the object as well with a master viewer who can open valves, close valves, where you can see the airflow running through the aircraft. And we've got them synchronized on 8 persons now.
In our local factory sites, we set up for an actual training, I think up to 3 to 5 training stations at once. Duration of each training takes up to 5 minutes or something like that. So it's not that long, so people can change a lot in a fast way. And the people who are not as in the VR application right now, they are watching one person or the next person using beamer screen or something like that, so they can have an idea, okay, this is the way he's doing it right now, so maybe I can do it like this, or that like this, or like this. And maybe they can just have a chat about, okay, I did it this way, you did it that way, and they're helping each other. That's what we see.
Thank you. I had another question down here. And if you want to direct your question, we're a bit tight on time, so pick a person.
Yeah, I have 2 questions concerning Chris and Oliver. I would like to know how many people are working for how long on your project? How many people are developing the world? and for how long, and how many people are developing the behavior of your world, and for how long did they do that?
Great question.
Thank you very much. So I think for the first trainings, for the overall effort, it took maybe like 3 or 4 months for the actual creation of the training. From 2 to 5 people, depending on the project stages. But there was also integrating the hardware, integrating the software into our IT integration. Right now, we are going down to 2 people to create the content, to create this level-based trainings. And it takes 6 to 8 weeks or something like that. But then you get the whole body or the whole application coming from the first concept, design workshop, and then delivering the real application to the factory side, to the training center where people actually train.
For the evacuation training, we had a team of 3 people internal with KLM, 2 people internal, and we had an external team out of 3. And for the rest of the training that we have at this moment, it's just me, myself, and somewhere in the back of my head. I create almost everything by now in KLM, but I use 360 video mostly, which is easy to do. But if you use 360 video, I'm around, for each minute video, it will take a day to edit. Yeah.
So I'm also talking about 2 people each project. Of course, we have a lot of factory sites all over the world. It's every time at 2, 3, 4 people who create the new assembly training, the new logistic training for the Polo, for the VRX, for the G1. So every time 2 people. So it can take a lot of money. But we do think, and we calculated it, and when we're not thinking it, we're also calculating the hard numbers, that we save money in the end, and also timing, because setting up a hardware prototype, actually maintain it, is really hard work. It takes a longer time than to create the virtual trainings.
Oliver from Volkswagen, thank you. Chris from KLM, thank you. Richard, Plane Solutions, thank you. And Joe, Microsoft, thank you. Thank you to everyone in the room.